Welcome to Chapter 3 and our discussion on culture. What is culture? Culture is an entire way of life for a group of people. It's hard for us to see our own culture, so we may not recognize the extent to which it shapes and defines who we are. If you think about a fish in a pond, the fish can see things like other fish, rocks, and food, but it really can't see the water. And it's the same way with culture. If you think about it, we walk around in the air all the time, but we don't really see the air. Culture is similar. It's all around us, but it's so ingrained in our day-to-day lives that we really don't see it unless we stop and look for it. Culture encompasses a lot of things. Things like language, standards of beauty, hand gestures, styles of dress, food, and music. And it's important to emphasize that culture is learned. It's passed from one generation to the next through communication, not genetics. Culture is passed on, and we pass it on by communicating aspects of our culture. For example, if you were to take a baby that was born in China, and when it was a week old, you take that baby and it would be adopted by an American family and moved to the United States. The child may have Chinese features like hair color, eye shape, but it will grow up speaking English, eating pizza, playing video games, and doing other things that American children do. The baby can't automatically speak Chinese and doesn't automatically like to eat Chinese food because culture is learned, and this baby is learning culture from American parents. When William goes on vacation to Germany, he sees older children having a glass of wine with their parents while at dinner. William, being from the United States, believes this is wrong. This is an example of ethnocentrism, multiculturalism, cultural relativism, or normlessness? And the answer is ethnocentrism. You may have experienced this yourself. If you've ever watched a program on television showing a remote tribe of people and their way of life seems very different, you might have said something like, "Oh, that is so gross. I can't believe those people eat that." You're assuming that your way of life is better than their way of life. Interestingly, if that tribe watched your daily life, they would question some of the things you consider to be normal. So that is what ethnocentrism is all about, and it's something that we work in a class like sociology to move away from. A definition of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism occurs when people use their own culture as a standard to evaluate another group or individual, leading to the view that cultures other than their own are abnormal. Something that we work to in the social sciences achieving is called cultural relativism, and that's the process of understanding other cultures on their own terms rather than judging according to one's own culture. You can think about the importance of cultural relativism when studying distant or remote cultures or even studying different cultures within the United States. For example, when we look at the culture in a person that would come from New York, we know that people in New York tend to communicate differently from people in Tennessee and Memphis. For example, people in New York tend to talk faster, they tend to be more in a hurry, may not use the courtesies that we are used to here in a community like Memphis, but it's a part of that, and things are different. Again, if it's not about it being better, but just being different. And so when we're studying any group, it's important to try and employ cultural relativism because it helps us as sociologists to see others more objectively. We now take a look at the components of culture. Culture consists of two different categories, material culture and symbolic culture. Material culture includes the objects associated with a cultural group, such as tools, machines, utensils, buildings, and artwork. Symbolic culture includes ways of thinking, beliefs, values, and assumptions, and ways of behaving, those norms, interactions, and types of communication that people engage in. And we find that symbolism is a very important component of culture. One of the most important functions of symbolic culture is that it allows us to communicate through signs, gestures, and language. Sometimes we get a little confused when we start talking about material culture and symbolic culture. An example of symbolic culture is the dollar bill. It's a material object, but the paper and ink that actually make the item aren't what's important here. The important thing is what the dollar stands for. Similarly, an American flag, it's not the material that makes the flag important, but the combination of the stars and stripes and a particular pattern that makes the symbol of the flag meaningful and a part of American symbolic culture. Signs or symbols, because actually they're what we call signs and symbols are similar, such as the traffic signal or product logo, are used to meaningfully represent something else. And gestures are signs that we make with our body, such as hand gestures and facial expressions. And it's important to note that gestures carry meaning also. Signs have meanings that make sense to people who are a part of that culture. For example, in the United States, if you see a stop signal and you see the colors red, yellow, and green, you know that it means something. And if you're driving your car and you come across a traffic signal, based upon the color that's displayed at the moment, it will direct you or you know to act accordingly. If it's red, you stop. If it's yellow, slow down. If it's green, you go. If you live in the United States, when we talk about gestures, and someone holds up their middle finger, you know that they're making a gesture that expresses disapproval or frustration. This gesture has a derogatory connotation and is intended to be insulting. However, in another culture, the same signal could be meant as information, for example, to tell another person that their significant other may be cheating on them.